Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, I would like to explain the materials of realisms and naturalisms. With me, Maria Zakia Alvisuma. This is the timeline of American literature, the periods of American literature. We have already learned Native American literature, explorations, colonialization, and revolution period, romanticism and transcendentalism. And then now it's time for us to study more about realism and naturalism in the year of 1860 up to 1914. The first, we talk about the historical background of this time. Yeah, what happened in this time? This time happened U.S. Civil War. The Civil War here happened between the industrial North and the agricultural slave-owning South. Yeah, the trigger of this Civil War is about the issues of the slavery. As we have already explained before in the previous period, Romantic and Transcendentalism, Harriet Beecher Stowe published novels that talk about the reality of the slave. And this novel are also one of the triggers this civil war between the North, that mostly all of the people live in the industrial city, and then with the South, that mostly the people, the white people who have a plantations, they mostly have slave to help them cultivate the plantation. And then after or post Civil War, American become more industrial. It means that this is the period of millionaire manufacturer and also the speculator. And then in this time also, there is a Darwinian theory, the survival of the fittest. Yeah? It means that this is something that we know that if someone cannot adapt it with the environment, with the force of the nature, they cannot survive. Yeah. And then the third is about the problems of urbanizations. Yeah. Because the grew of the industrial era, it means that some of the problems related to the urbanizations and industrializations, for example, like poor and overcrowded housing, pollutions, and then low pay of salary, and the others, it happened as the impact of the grew of the industrial era here. Okay, that's about the historical background, and then we go to the literary development here. What happened here in the realism and the naturalism period here, mostly people, they begin to write and think about reality instead of imagined or fantastic ideas. Here, realism was a literary movement that focused on the ordinary characters' life and then everyday life situations. So, some of the works of realism, they portrait the everyday life reality, yeah, the depictions of the regions, and then about the social problems, the social protests, or the issues that related to the region. Okay, some of the branch of the realisms, naturalisms, yeah, naturalisms is one of the brands of realism. We would like to explain it later. And then beside naturalism, there are also local colorists, or we can say that this is regionalism. And some of the writers are women, so that we can call women regional novelists. And then in this time also, this is the rise or the emerging of the Black American literature. So this is the root of the Black American literature here in this time. Yeah, because post-slavery, most of the Afro-American or most of the slave, they have a freedom to express their ideas. Yeah, and then in this time, the other literary works besides fictions in the genre of the realism, there is also poetry here, and then for the Black American literature, I'll give the examples of the autobiography, poetry, and then also essays and fictions. Okay, we would like to go for the first. This is the example of the realisms. The most famous one of the realism's novels, that's Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Besides that, there is also William Dean Howell, The Rise of Silas Lapham, and then Stephen Crane, The Red Badge of Courage. Okay, let me try to take a look here for the Mark Twain's here. Here, Mark Twain give the issues of the abolitions, give the issues of the post-slavery civil war of abolitions. Yeah, and then for the Williams novels, this is talk about social realisms. Yeah, the novel here as the critic of the American capitalisms and imperialisms. Yeah, this is talk about the business in America. And then Stephen Crane, this novel set during the Civil War. So this is the real depictions of the Civil War that happened in the United States of America. And this is the portrait of the novels we see in the first. This is the novels of Huckleberry Finn. The main characters here is a young boy with the age of 14 years old, and then he has a partner, and the partner here is Jim. He is a slave. Yeah, he's a slave. Then the second one, Tom Sawyer. This is also the adventure. And then the rise of Silas Lapham that we have already explained that this is talk about the business in America. And then this one, the Stephen Crane's novel, this is talk about the depictions of the Civil War. And all of this is called as the local colorists. Yeah, why it's called as the local colorist? Because this is, for example, like Huckleberry Finn's, the setting here is in the Mississippi River. It means that it talks about the issues around there. Yeah, the Mississippi River, for example, like that. Yeah, and then yeah, that's it. And I'll give you, this is the example, the summary of the Huckleberry Finn. Okay, because this novel is the famous novel of this era and it has already been adapted into movie, I think that you are familiar with the story of Huckleberry Finn here. Okay, let me start by giving you just a short summary here that Huckleberry Finn actually living with Mrs. Watson, yeah, living with Mrs. Watson, and then uh, he is adopted by Mrs. Watson. However, in the life of being a common people, which is adopted by Mrs. Watson, Huckleberry Finn feels so bored with the daily activities that he have to do. For example, like going to school and then learning about Bible, religion, and the others. He missed such a freedom to get an adventure. And then suddenly, in his day, the real fathers of Huckleberry Finn kidnap him, and then it means that Huckleberry Finn feel, oh, this is the freedom that I can get here. However, the fact is not say the same. Yeah, the father says an alcoholism. It means that Huckle get an abuse there. So Huckle would like to escape from his father, and he escapes through the Mississippi River here. And then in the way of escaping from his father, um, Finn found Jim. This is Jim. Yeah, Jim is one of the slave owned by Mrs. Watson. Yeah, this is Mrs. Watson. It means that uh, Finn recognized this slave before. Yeah, so Jim Finn asks Jim, why did you here? Are you escaping from someone? Yeah. And then Jim says that Mrs. Watson would like to sell him to the other owner because Mrs. Watson need money. So it means that Jim will be separated from his family. It means that he escapes and he doesn't want to be sold to another owner. Yeah, and this is the start of the adventure. So Finn has a partner. The partner is Jim, and then here, Finn uh, tried to protect Jim, and then Jim also tried to protect Finn from the father. And then Finn here doesn't want to report to the government that in this time there is a even though in this time that there is a policy that if someone find an escaping slave or yes, so the one have to report to the owner. Jadi ketika ada orang yang menemukan adanya budak dan kemudian ya menemukan ada budak, maka harus dilaporkan atau dikembalikan kepada pemiliknya. Akan tetapi Finn tidak melakukan itu. Jadi mereka berdua saling melindungi, gitu ya. Okay, and then here that we have to underline here in this story is that both of them escape from reality. Yeah? Jim escaped from the slavery, and then Finn escaped for the routines or the boredom of their life. Yeah, so this is one of the example of the realism novel. Okay, and then the next we go to the regional realisms. Yeah, or we can call it also as local colorism also. Yeah, all regions of the country celebrated themselves in writing influenced by local color. Some of it included social protests. Yeah, so one of the themes is social protests, especially toward the end of the century when social inequality and economic hardship were particular pressing issues. Uh, Let me tell you that this is some of the example of the novels written by Harriet Beecher Stowe, and then Sarah Orne Jewett, Bret Hartes, Jack London's, and Washington Cables. Yeah? Most of the novels here is the depictions of the regions that the authors live, and then they try to figure out the settings, what happened actually in the regions that they are living. For example, like in the novel by Harriet Beecher Stowe, this is the depictions of the New England, especially the fishing communities. So the problems about the fishing communities here, the author tried to figure out. Okay, besides that, there is also woman fictions here that is written by the regional authors here. For example, like Ellen Glasgow, Willa Caters, Mary Wilkes Freeman, and then Kate, and also Charlotte Perkins. Yeah, I'll give you that example that this novels is exploring the woman's life, yeah, exploring the issues faced by women. For example, like here, for the story of an hour here, okay, this is one of the short story written by Kate here. This is the depictions of the 19th century marriage. Yeah? The struggle of the woman find out her own identity, the relationship between husband and wife, and yes, this is the self-realizations of a woman in the marriage. Yeah, I'll give you yes, this is the picture of the novels, yeah, about woman's life, and this is the summary of the story of an hour. Yes, because the title if this is the story of an hour. So this is the first picture here. This is the pictures of an hour. Yeah, what happened in the setting time of only 1 hour here? Okay, this is the main character here. This is the main character, the woman here. This is Mrs. Mallard. Yeah, Mrs. Mallard has a trouble with the heart. Yeah. Okay. So if there is bad news, or yes, the news that may shock her, it might cause in the heart attack. So in this time, her brother and her sister would like to give a news about her husband, that actually her husband report report died in the accidents of train. Yeah. Now, after hearing this kind of news, in the first time, the uh, both of Richard and also Josephine find out this is a kind of bad news. Yeah. So after hearing this, Mrs. Mallard go upstairs. Yeah. Here in the upstairs in the room, and then she locked herself there. She contemplating. Yeah. She contemplating, and then she look at the window. She look at the window, and then what she can find outside, she can find such a what is it, atmosphere of happiness. Yeah, outside she find an atmosphere of happiness. It means that the reader might give a conclusions that actually Mrs. Mark find a freedom. Yeah, she can be free from her husband, and then she can see the bright future and then in the next. Yeah, by the symbols of looking at the window, and she finds what is it, something good over there. Okay, and then for the several times, yeah, someone's giving a news to Mrs. Mallard. Yeah, the news is that the husband of Mrs. Mallard is not one of the victims. It means that the information is false. And then hearing this news, Mrs. Mallard's getting a collapse. And then the doctor said that Mrs. Mallard get a heart attack and she died. So here, such an irony. In the first, we get information that the one who has died is the husband of Mrs. Mallard. However, here, the real picture here say that Mrs. Mallard is died because of the news. Yeah. The others recognize that this is Mrs. Mallard feeling so happy so much, so that um, she getting a heart attack. But we don't know what actually happened here. Whether is it true that Mrs. Mallard happy or no? Yeah, this is one of the example of the story that's talking about woman issues here. Okay, next we go to the psychological realisms here. Psychological realisms here, also one of the branch of the realisms, and it talk about the honest portrayal of real life human emotions, thoughts, feeling, and personality traits. In other words, in the European narrative technique, it's also called as stream of consciousness. Yeah, it means that this is the real picture of the working of the mind, the changing consciousness of the character, how characters respond to the event of the story. Jadi ini adalah stream of consciousness. Jadi gambaran nyata apa yang sebenarnya difikirkan oleh karakter ketika dia menyikapi hal yang terjadi. Nah, itu dia ya. And then the leading figures of this psychological realisms are Henry James and Edith Wharton. As you know that both of the writers grew up partly in Europe. Ya, jadi mereka masih terinfluence naratif teknik yang ada di Europe ya. Karena di sini di periode realism and naturalism ini terjadi dari tahun 1860 sampai dengan 1914 yang notabene di Inggris pada saat itu disebut zaman modernisme, ya, karena kalau di Inggris pada tahun 1901 itu sudah masuk ke dalam zaman modernisme di mana aliran stream of consciousness itu marak atau menjadi tren di sana, ya. Oke. The examples here is Daisy Miller's The Bostonians by Henry James, and also The House of Milk, The Age of Innocence. This is the famous novel. I think that you may be familiar with this kind of the title of the novel if you go to the bookstore, literature bookstore. So that this is the classics novels. It belongs to the classic novels. Okay. I'll give you the examples of the story of the Bostonians here. The Bostonian. Okay, so here, what I would like to highlight here, the story exposed the introspections and expositions of the characters' most intimate thoughts and feelings. Yeah. In the Bostonians here, paints a vivid picture of American politics. Jadi menggambarkan situasi dari politik Amerika politik pada saat itu. Ya, focuses on the motivations and the internal thoughts of the characters. The authors not only show what the characters do, but also explain why they take such an action, expressing an opinion on societal or political issue through the choice of the characters. Jadi tugas dari pengarang di sini adalah mengungkapkan motivasi apa yang membuat karakter melakukan hal sedemikian rupa sehingga. Jadi pikirannya ya itu diungkapkan dalam cerita. Ini disebut naratif teknik. This is the picture of the novels, written by Henry James and also Edith Wharton. Okay, next we go to the naturalisms here. Naturalism is called as an extreme form of realism. And the historical background is that as the industrializations grew, this caused the damage of the economic forces, and it caused on the alienations for lower class life. Industrialisasi bertumbuh kembang dengan pesat, banyak sekali milioner, dan ada kaum yang teralienasi di sini atau terpinggirkan, terasingkan, yaitu kaum lower class, mereka yang berada di dalam garis kemiskinan. And then the second one, the emergence of the Darwinian thoughts, natural selection, survival of the fittest. Munculnya teori Darwin, yaitu survival of the fittest. This theory suggesting that natural forces, heredity, environment, social condition shape human. Jadi ada faktor determinisme, faktor-faktor alam, yaitu keturunan, lingkungan, social conditions, keturunan, lingkungan, dan juga lingkungan itu akan membentuk kepribadian dari manusia tersebut. Jadi akan membentuk bagaimana tingkah laku dari manusia tersebut, membentuk nasibnya gitu ya. Okay, the philosophical doctrine of determinism here view individuals as unhelpless of the economic and social forces, so that everything is beyond their control. Because a universe here is considered as a machine. Kita hanya mesin, ada yang menggerakkan kita. Jadi seakan-akan di sini kita tidak mempunyai free will, gitu ya. Okay, this is the characteristic of the naturalisms here. Themes, temanya adalah kebanyakan survival, kemampuan untuk bertahan hidup. Nah, kemudian determinism atau fate, dan violence, kekerasan. Settingnya lower class life, poverty, impoverishment. Character, the character has a character of pessimism. Then the plot exposes the social problem, depict the damage of economic forces and alienation. Sesuatu yang menyebabkan karakter itu teralienasi atau terasingkan, sehingga kebanyakan akhir, the end of the naturalist fictions here has a sad ending. For example, the main character has commit suicide or die. because of something. Okay. This is the example of the novels Maggie, The Goal of the Streets, American Tragedy, Martin Eden. Ini Martin Eden. Huh? Ini both of the main characters here commit suicide because they cannot survive in their life. Ya, tidak dapat menahan banyak social problem yang terjadi, ya akhirnya dia commit suicide. Ya, oke. Oke, yang akan kita bahas hari ini adalah Maggie, A Goal of the Streets. Ya. Maggie is one of the novels of naturalists. What is it talking about? This is talking about a family which is living in the poverty, and the main characters here is Maggie. Nah, ini gambarnya ya. Nah, ini Maggie. Ini adalah Maggie. Ini adalah boyfriend Maggie, boyfriendnya ya. Dan ini adalah the mothers of Maggie. Okay, abuse. Here, Maggie living in the poverty. And then with the family that often do such a violence or abuses to Maggie. And then here, actually the characteristic of the characterizations of Maggie is a kind and innocent girl. Yeah, actually. And then because of there are so much violence and abuses Maggie get in the home, so Maggie decided to leave home with her boyfriend, yeah, hoping that she can get a better future. Yeah, okay, so leaving home. And then after Maggie decided to live with her love, her mother doesn't want to accept her again if Maggie would like to return home. So this is the consequence. If Maggie leaving the home, so the mother will not doesn't want to receive her again. Yeah. Okay. Leaving home, homeless, the mother tells Maggie not to return if she lives with her love. Okay, and then what happened next? Do you think that Maggie get a better future or happy life? But the reality has the different things that be it leaves Maggie for another girl. It means that Maggie being so alone here, loneliness, and she feels that she is alienated by the by the environment. Ibunya sudah tidak mau menerima, pacarnya meninggalkan dia, dia merasa terasingkan. And then she becomes a prostitution girl. She prostitute herself. And then in the end of the story, Maggie died. Ya. Dan kemudian Maggie meninggal. Nah, ini masih belum jelas apakah meninggalnya itu karena dia commit suicide ataukah dibunuh. Nah, this is a tragic ending of Maggie, yeah, who is living in the poverty, and then the environment, the social conditions shape her to be a prostitution girl. Some of the differences of the realisms and naturalisms I show here. Okay, in the plot. In the plot of the realisms, it can be happy ending or it can be sad ending. It based on the how the character try to face the social or the problems here. Realism gives us a picture of life as it really is, ya. Jadi kehidupan pada kenyataannya, ya, the real depictions. Story of realism deals with everyday problems that most people encounter. Sometimes the problems can be overcome by the characters, but sometimes they don't. Ya, kadang-kadang happy ending, kadang enggak, ya. However, in the plot of the naturalisms, here mostly it has a tragic ending. Yeah. Naturalists believe in the forces larger than the individual, like nature, fate, and heredity. Jadi takdir yang membuat main characters ya main characters atau karakter cannot do the free will, mengikuti nasib itu ya. And then characters. Realism shows that a person's decisions is based upon his response to the situations, believes in free will. Ya, jadi decisions atau keputusan tindakan apapun act oleh main karakter atau karakter itu sesuai dengan bagaimana respon main karakter terhadap situasi, ya, free will. And for the naturalism shows that person's decisions is predetermined by natural forces that make him act in a certain way. Pessimism, ya, bukan optimism tapi pessimism. Theme, the theme in the realisms abolitions, about abolitions, ya, post-slavery stories like Huckleberry Finn, social protests, and women's self-realizations. And the theme for the naturalisms here, survival, determinisms, and violence. Okay, now another literature that come up in the era of realism and naturalism is Black American literature. The literary works here is various. It means that it's not only fictions, but also autobiography, essays, poem, and also fictions and short story. Yeah, for example, like here, this is an autobiography. This one, novels. This is a social protest. Yeah, and then this was also an autobiography. Okay, let's talk it in detail, yeah. Here, an autobiography written by Booker T. Washington, yeah. This is talk about the recounts the writer's successful struggle to better himself, perjuangan dari main karakter untuk bisa mencapai yang terbaik dalam dirinya. Ya, he become renowned for his effort to improve the lives of African American. Jadi dia memperbaiki taraf hidupnya sebagai seorang Afro-Amerika. The second one, the novels or fictions by Charles Waddell Chestnut. Yeah, these fictions explore the complex issues of racial and social identity in the post-Civil War. So dari realita dari kaum kulit hitam Afro-Amerika itu ya tertuang dalam novel ini. Kemudian ini ada essay yang karangan dari W.E.B. Du Bois ya. This is also called as protest literature. This essay demonstrates the segregation. Yeah? Segregation is unequal and separate treatment of Black Americans. Jadi pemisahan antara kulit hitam dengan kulit putih. Ya, yang mana ini tidak akan menghasilkan sesuatu yang baik, tapi ini akan berdampak pada inferiority, particularly in education. Pendidikan, ya, berdampak pada pendidikan. Okay, and then the poem by James Weldon Johnson. This poem conveys the Black American concerns with the issues of identity in America. Okay, now we go to another genre of literature. That's the poetry. Yeah? The poetry here is famous with the Chicago School of Poetry. Yeah. And then the leading figures here is Edgar Lee Masters, Carl Sandburg, Michael Lindsay, and Edwin Arlington Robinson. What's the poem talking about? The poem talking about the critical view of the village life, portrayals of a region, for example, a portrait of Chicago. And then the Congo, this is celebrates the history of Africans. Yeah? And then the last, Richard Cory by Edwin Arlington Robinson. This poem, Richard Cory, this poem is a portrait of a wealthy man who commits suicide. Potret dari orang yang sangat kaya dan dia ternyata bernasib tragis di akhir hidupnya, yaitu commit suicide atau bunuh diri ya. Oke, kita bahas ini ya. One of the poems in this era, Richard Cory by Edwin Arlington Robinson. Whenever Richard Cory went downtown, we, people on the pavement, looked at him. He was a gentleman from soul to crown, clean-favored and imperially slim. In the first stanza here, it's rhyming. It has a strict rules of making a poetry. There is a poetic form here. Rimanya ada rima api-api di sini ya, mempunyai tata cara penulisan di sini ya. And then this talked about the yes, the life of Richard Cory. Bahwasanya dia ini seorang yang disorot ya. Semua orang mengaguminya gitu ya, Richard Cory. Then you go to second stanza, and he was always quietly arrayed, and he was always human when he talked. But still he fluttered pulse when he said good morning, and he glittered when he walked. Ya, this is the appearance of Richard Cory. Di sini banyak kata-kata seperti glittered, ya, kemudian dia sangat humanis sekali ya, sopan dalam bicaranya ya. Kemudian ketika berjalan juga dia mempesona gitu ya. And he was rich, yes, richer than a king, an admirable schooled in every grace. In fine, we thought that he was everything to make us wish that we were in his place. Banyak orang yang selalu mengaguminya, sehingga banyak orang yang berpikiran andai saja saya berada di posisinya Richard Cory ini. Ya, karena dia kaya, lebih kaya dari raja. Gitu ya. So on we worked and waited for the light, and went without the meat and cursed the bread. And Richard Cory, one calm summer night, went home and put a ballad through his head. Ini dia ya, tragic life of Richard Cory. Ketika orang-orang yang bekerja, dia kadang-kadang mendapat upah, kadang-kadang tidak, pulang dengan membawa kebahagiaan, kadang enggak. Nah, di sini Richard Cory pada malam summer, malam musim panas, dia pulang ke rumah dan dia menembakkan peluru di kepalanya. Nah, ini dia. Ya, potret dari puisi di era realism and naturalism. Okay, to test your understanding for the materials, I would like you to answer one of these questions. What is realisms? What is naturalisms? What is the difference between realism and naturalisms? Mentions the works of realisms that you like. What is it about? Mentions the work of naturalism that you like. What is it about? Thank you for your attention. And this is the references. And wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi